You think patience is sitting still? You think it's waiting politely, hoping life throws you a bone? That's why you're broke, frustrated, and invisible. Patience isn't passive, it's violent control. It's the ability to choke your impulses, silence your emotions, and keep moving when your weak mind is begging you to quit. Most men don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they can't endure the silence. They can't handle not winning today, so they fold, and nobody remembers them. Let me tell you what actually happens when you stay patient long enough. You stop reacting like an emotional animal and start operating like a strategist. While everyone else is chasing quick wins, you're stacking silent victories. Day after day, repetition after repetition, you're building something they can't even see. And because they can't see it, they underestimate you. Good. Let them. The loud ones burn out. The patient ones take over. Now let's talk about something most people are too soft to understand. Speaking in tongues. Not in some weak, mystical sense. I'm talking about transformation so deep that your old language, the way you think, react, and identify yourself Ds. You don't speak like your past self anymore. You don't think like the average man anymore. Your internal dialogue changes. Your standards change. Your tolerance for excuses disappears. It's like you've unlocked a new operating system, and everyone else is still running outdated garbage. When you stay patient long enough, you stop needing validation. That's power. You stop explaining yourself. That's dominance. You stop caring who understands you. That's freedom. You're no longer trying to be accepted. You're building something so undeniable that acceptance becomes irrelevant. Weak men talk. Strong men execute. Kings don't announce. They arrive. Discipline is the language of the elite. Repetition is the grammar. Control is the accent. And over time, you become fluent. You don't hesitate. You don't doubt. You don't negotiate with your lower self. You command it. Every day you show up when you don't feel like it. You're rewriting your identity. Not pretending. Not faking. Becoming. And here's the part nobody tells you: it's lonely. There's no applause, no instant reward, just you, your thoughts, and your standards. That's where most men break. They need noise. They need approval. They need comfort. You need results. And results only come to the man who can endure the void without losing his edge. So what happens when you stay patient long enough? You become dangerous, not loud, not emotional. Dangerous, calculated, precise, unshakable. While others panic, you move. While others panic, you can move. While others quit, you continue. While others talk, you build. And one day, without warning, everything shifts. The same people who ignored you start watching you. The same people who doubted you start copying you. But by then, you're already 10 levels ahead. You think patience is sitting still, doing nothing, waiting for life to magically reward you. That's a lie weak men tell themselves to justify their lack of action. Real patience is controlled aggression. It's movement without panic. It's discipline without noise. It's the ability to stay locked in when everything around you is screaming for distraction. If you're not building, improving, or sharpening while you wait, then you're not patient, you're stagnant. Most people confuse urgency with effectiveness. They rush into things, chase quick results, and burn out the moment resistance hits. That's why they stay average. They have no control over their impulses. They need constant feedback, constant wins, constant validation. The second results slow down, they collapse. That's not strength, it's dependency. And dependency is the fastest way to become irrelevant. Controlled aggression is different. It's calculated. It's precise. You're not reacting to emotions. You're directing them. You wake up and execute whether you feel like it or not. You train your mind to ignore boredom, ignore frustration, ignore the lack of immediate reward. Because you understand something most people don't, the real game is not played in moments of excitement. It's won in long periods of silence. Every day you show up without visible results. You're separating yourself from the majority. That's where the edge is built. Not in the spotlight, not in the big wins, but in the quiet repetition nobody respects. While others are looking for shortcuts, you're mastering the fundamentals. While they're switching strategies every week, you're doubling down on discipline. That's how dominance is created, through consistency that most people are too weak to maintain. There's a brutal truth most people avoid. Impatience exposes insecurity. If you can't wait, it means you don't trust your process. It means you need proof to keep going. Strong men don't need proof, they create it. They don't chase outcomes, they control inputs. They don't panic when results are delayed. They adjust, refine, and keep moving forward with absolute certainty. Look at how most people operate. They start strong, full of motivation, full of energy. Then reality hits. Progress slows. Results don't come fast enough. And suddenly they're questioning everything. They quit, restart, jump to something new, and repeat the same cycle over and over again. That's not bad luck, that's lack of control. They are slaves to their emotions, and emotions will always betray you under pressure. Controlled aggression means you don't break that cycle. You commit and you stay committed. Not for a week, not for a month, but for as long as it takes. You remove the option of quitting. You eliminate negotiation with your weaker self. You operate on standards, not feelings. That's where real patience lives. Not in waiting, but in relentless, disciplined execution over time. And here's what most people fail to understand. The longer you can sustain this level of control, the more dangerous you become. Because while others are inconsistent, distracted, and scattered, you're building momentum. Invisible at first, unstoppable later. The gap between you and everyone else doesn't grow overnight. It expands quietly, day by day, until it becomes impossible to ignore. You don't need to move fast, you need to move right, and you need to keep moving. That's the difference. Anyone can sprint for a short period. Very few can maintain pressure without breaking. That's why patience, real patience, is a weapon. It allows you to outlast, outwork, and outperform people who are more talented but less disciplined. So stop glorifying waiting as if it's a virtue. It's not. Execution is the virtue. Control is the skill. Aggression is the engine. And when you combine all three with time, you become something most people will never understand. Someone who doesn't just chase success, but inevitably commands it. You're addicted to fast results, and it's killing your potential. You want proof immediately. You want progress you can show off. You want validation before you've earned anything real. That mindset doesn't build power, it exposes weakness. Because anything that comes fast leaves just as fast, and deep down, you know it. That's why you keep starting over. Quick wins feel good, but they don't change who you are. They don't build structure. They don't create stability. They give you a temporary high, then drop you right back into the same cycle of inconsistency. One good week, followed by 3 bad ones. One burst of motivation, followed by complete collapse. That's not progress, that's chaos disguised as effort. Permanent power is different. It's not exciting at first, it's repetitive. It's slow. It's disciplined to the point where it feels almost boring. But that's exactly why it works. Because it forces you to become someone who can sustain results, not just achieve them once. And that's the difference between amateurs and professionals. Anyone can win once, but very few can keep winning. You have to understand this clearly. Success isn't about what you can do on your best day. It's about what you can repeat on your worst day. When you're tired, distracted, unmotivated, and frustrated, that's when your true level is revealed. And if your system depends on you feeling good, then you don't have a system, you have a liability. Most people build their lives on unstable foundations. They chase whatever works today without thinking about whether it will still work tomorrow. They jump from one strategy to another, constantly searching for something easier, something faster, something more exciting. And every time they switch, they reset their progress. They never go deep enough to gain real leverage. They stay surface level, permanently stuck in the beginner phase. Permanent power comes from depth, not speed. It comes from mastering a few things at an elite level instead of chasing everything at a mediocre level. It requires patience, but not passive patience, active, disciplined patience. The kind where you show up every day with intent, even when nothing feels like it's changing. Because you understand that real growth is happening beneath the surface where nobody can see it. Think about it like this. Any structure that's built to last takes time to reinforce. If you rush the process, you create cracks. And those cracks don't show immediately, they show under pressure. The moment things get difficult, everything starts to collapse. That's why people who chase quick success can't handle setbacks. They've never built resilience. They've never trained themselves to endure. You want power? Then stop measuring your progress by short-term results. Measure it by your ability to stay consistent. Measure it by how well you execute without external rewards. Measure it by how little you rely on motivation. Because the less you need external triggers to act, the more control you have over your life. There's a reason most people never break out of mediocrity. They don't stay in the game long enough. They quit right before things start compounding. They abandon the process right before it starts working, and then they look at others who stay consistent and call it luck. It's not luck. It's endurance. The man who wins is not the one who moves the fastest. It's the one who refuses to stop. The one who keeps building when it's invisible, keeps working when it's boring, keeps executing when there's no applause. Over time, that level of consistency creates something that quick wins never can, unshakable authority. And once you have that, everything changes. You're no longer chasing opportunities, they start coming to you. You're no longer proving yourself, you've already established your position. You're no longer dependent on outcomes. You control the process that creates them. That's what permanent power looks like. You keep telling yourself you've changed, but your results expose the truth. If your thinking is the same, your reactions are the same, and your habits are the same, then nothing about you has evolved. You've just been busy. Movement is not transformation. Effort is not identity. And pretending to improve is the fastest way to stay exactly where you are. Most men never upgrade their identity, they decorate it. They read a few books, watch a few videos, feel temporarily inspired, and then go right back to the same patterns, same excuses, same emotional reactions, same weak standards. They want a different life without becoming a different person. That's not ambition, that's delusion. Your identity is not what you say you are, it's what you repeatedly do under pressure. When things get hard, when tired, when nobody is watching, that's when your real self shows up. And if that version of you is still undisciplined, still reactive, still inconsistent, then you haven't grown. You've just been rehearsing change without committing to it. Real evolution is uncomfortable. It forces you to abandon parts of yourself that feel familiar. Your old habits, your old mindset, even your old environment, they all start to feel like limitations instead of comfort zones. That's where most people stop. They don't want to let go of who they were, so they stay trapped between who they are and who they could be. That space is where potential dies. You have to understand something most people avoid. Identity is built through standards, not intentions. You don't become disciplined by thinking about discipline. You become disciplined by acting with discipline repeatedly until it becomes automatic. You'll become confident by waiting to feel confident. You become confident by executing despite doubt. Action rewires identity, not the other way around. Every time you tolerate weakness, you reinforce it. Every time you break your own word, you train yourself to be unreliable. Every time you choose comfort over growth, you confirm your current level. And over time, those small decisions stack into a fixed identity that becomes harder and harder to change. That's why most people stay average, not because they lack ability, but because they'd conditioned themselves into limitation. If you want to evolve, you need to become ruthless with your standards. You can't negotiate with your lower self anymore. You can't allow excuses to pass as reasons. You can't keep justifying behavior that doesn't align with the man you claim you want to become. Because every contradiction weakens your identity, and a weak identity cannot produce strong results. The shift happens when you stop asking, "What do I feel like doing?" and start asking, "What does the man I'm becoming do in this situation?" That question forces alignment. It forces discipline. It forces you to act according to a higher standard, not your current mood. And when you repeat that long enough, something changes. You stop pretending, and you start becoming. This is where most people get exposed. They want the image of growth without the cost of transformation. They want to look strong without developing strength. They want respect without earning it. But the reality is simple. Your identity will always reflect your habits. And if your habits are weak, your identity will never command anything. You don't rise to your goals. You fall to your standards. And if your identity hasn't evolved, your results won't either. That's the truth most people run from. Because changing your identity means confronting yourself honestly. It means admitting that who you are right now is not enough. And most people would rather protect their ego than upgrade their life. But the moment you accept that and act on it relentlessly, you separate yourself from everyone else. You stop chasing improvement and start embodying it. You stop needing motivation and start operating with discipline. You stop hoping for change and start enforcing it. And that's when your identity shifts from something you talk about to something you prove. You trust your feelings too much, and that's exactly why you're inconsistent. You wake up and decide your actions based on your mood, your energy, your comfort level, and then you wonder why nothing in your life stabilizes. Emotion is unreliable by nature. It shifts, it fluctuates, it reacts. If your execution depends on something that unstable, then your entire life is built on a weak foundation. Most people operate like this without even realizing it. They feel motivated, so they work. They feel tired, so they stop. They feel inspired, so they push. They feel discouraged, so they quit. It's a cycle of emotional decision-making that guarantees inconsistency. And inconsistency guarantees mediocrity, because you can't build anything meaningful if your effort is conditional. Discipline removes that condition. It doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't negotiate. It operates on standards, not emotions. You do the work because it needs to be done, not because you're in the right mindset. That's the difference between someone who occasionally performs and someone who consistently dominates. You need to understand this clearly. Your feelings are not signals of truth. They're signals of comfort. They push you toward what's easy, what's familiar, what's immediately rewarding. But everything that builds strength, control, and power exists outside that comfort zone. So if you follow your emotions, you will always be pulled away from growth and toward stagnation. Look at your worst habits. They don't come from discipline, they come from emotion. Procrastination, distraction, avoidance, excuses, these are all emotional responses. They feel good in the moment, but they destroy long-term progress. And the more you give in to them, the stronger they become. You train your mind to escape pressure instead of handling it. Discipline does the opposite. It trains you to face discomfort directly, to act when it's inconvenient, to execute when it's boring, to continue when it's frustrating. And over time, that builds something far more valuable than motivation. It builds control. The ability to command your actions regardless of internal resistance. This is where most people fail. They think they need to feel ready before they act. They wait for the right mood, the right time, the right energy. But that moment never comes consistently. And even when it does, it doesn't last. So they stay stuck, waiting for a feeling that can't sustain performance. High-level individuals don't wait. They decide, and then they move. Their standard is fixed. Their behavior is predictable. Whether they feel strong or weak, focused or distracted, they execute anyway. That's what creates momentum. Not bursts of motivation, but steady, disciplined action repeated over time. There's a reason discipline feels hard. It's because it goes against your natural tendencies. It forces you to override impulses, to ignore distractions, to push through resistance. But that difficulty is what makes it valuable. Because every time you choose discipline over emotion, you strengthen your ability to control yourself. And control is everything. Without it, you're reactive. You're influenced by your environment, your mood, your circumstances. With it, you become stable, focused, predictable in your execution. That's when progress becomes inevitable, because you're no longer depending on variables you can't control. The harsh reality is this: if you can't control your own behavior, you can't control your outcomes. And if your outcomes are out of control, your life will reflect that. It's not about talent. It's not about intelligence. It's about whether you can do what needs to be done when it needs to be done. Regardless of how you feel, you don't need more motivation. You need more discipline. You need to stop asking yourself what you want to do and start deciding what must be done. That shift alone separates those who stay stuck from those who move forward with certainty. You talk too much, and it's costing you more than you realize. Every time you announce your plans, explain your intentions, or seek validation for what you're about to do, you weaken your position. You dilute your focus. You turn execution into performance. And performance is not progress, it's distraction dressed up as effort. Most men are addicted to being seen trying instead of actually succeeding. They post, they talk, they declare, but they don't build. Because talking gives them a false sense of achievement. It tricks the mind into feeling productive without producing anything real. That's why they stay stuck. They're chasing recognition, not results. Silence removes that illusion. When you stop announcing your moves, you eliminate the need for external approval. You stop performing for others and start executing for yourself. That shift alone changes everything. Because now your actions are no longer tied to how they are perceived. They are tied to a standard you've set internally. There's a reason high-level individuals move quietly. It's not because they lack confidence. It's because they understand leverage. Information is power. The less you reveal, the more control you maintain. When people don't fully understand what you're doing, they can't interfere, they can't compete effectively, and they can't anticipate your next move. Look at how most people operate. They expose everything, every idea, every plan, every step. And in doing so, they open themselves up to noise. Opinions, doubts, criticism, distractions. Suddenly, what started as a clear path becomes clouded. They start second-guessing. They lose direction, all because they invited the wrong voices into a process that required focus. Silence protects clarity. It creates space for deep work, uninterrupted thinking, and consistent execution. When you're not busy explaining yourself, you're free to refine your strategy. When you're not seeking approval, you're free to make decisions based on logic, not emotion. That's how precision is developed away from noise, away from distraction. There's another layer most people don't understand. Silence builds psychological advantage. When people don't know what you're doing, they underestimate you. They assume you're inactive, distracted, or irrelevant. That's exactly where you want them. Because while they're focused on visible competition, you're building something they can't measure. And when the results finally show, it hits harder. Not because it happened overnight, but because it appeared that way to everyone who wasn't paying attention. That's the power of quiet execution. It compresses perception. Years of work look like sudden success, and that illusion creates authority. But silence is difficult for those who crave attention. It forces you to operate without applause, without recognition, without immediate feedback. It forces you to trust your process completely. And that's where most people fail. They need to be seen. They need to be acknowledged. They need confirmation that they're on the right path. You don't. If your direction is solid, you don't need anyone to validate it. If your standards are high, you don't need anyone to approve them. You move because you've decided, not because someone is watching. That level of independence is rare, and it's powerful. When you eliminate unnecessary noise, your actions become sharper. Your decisions become faster. Your focus becomes deeper. You're no longer splitting your energy between execution and explanation. Everything goes into the work. And over time, that concentrated effort produces results that scattered attention never could. Most people want to be loud and successful. They end up being loud and average. The ones who understand the game stay quiet and become undeniable. You say you want power, but you can't even sit alone with your own thoughts for an hour. That's the reality you keep avoiding. You crave connection, attention, validation, constant noise to distract you from the fact that you haven't built anything solid yet. And because of that, you keep yourself surrounded, entertained, and busy, but never truly progressing. Loneliness isn't your enemy. It's your filter. It removes the weak dependencies you've been hiding behind. When you're alone, there's no one to impress, no one to blame, no one to distract you. It's just you and the truth of your current level. And that truth is uncomfortable. That's why most people run from it. They fill their time with meaningless conversations, endless scrolling, shallow relationships, anything to avoid facing themselves directly. Because the moment they're alone, the noise disappears. And when the noise disappears, reality becomes clear. Their lack of discipline, their inconsistency, their excuses, it all becomes impossible to ignore. But that's exactly where growth starts. Not in comfort, not in crowds, not in constant interaction, but in isolation. Because isolation forces clarity. It forces you to confront your habits, your thoughts, your standards. It strips away illusion and leaves you with one question: are you actually who you claim to be? Most people can't handle that question. They would rather stay distracted than face the gap between their potential and their current reality. So they avoid solitude, and in doing so, they avoid growth. They remain dependent on external stimulation, external approval, external direction. And dependency is the opposite of power. When you embrace loneliness, something shifts. You stop needing others to regulate your emotions. You stop relying on external input to make decisions. You develop internal stability. That's where real strength is built. Not in how you perform in front of others, but in how you operate when no one is there. This is where discipline becomes sharper. Without distractions, there are no excuses. You either do the work or you don't. You either improve or you stagnate. There's no middle ground. And that level of accountability accelerates growth in a way that comfort never will. There's also a deeper level to this. When you're alone, your thinking evolves. You're not influenced by average opinions, weak perspectives, or limited beliefs. You start to think independently. Strategically, you begin to see patterns, opportunities, and solutions that most people miss because they're too busy consuming noise. That's how dangerous individuals are built. Not through constant interaction, but through controlled isolation. They spend time refining their mindset, sharpening their focus, and strengthening their discipline without interference. And when they re-enter the world, they operate at a completely different level. But understand as clearly, loneliness doesn't feel good. It's not supposed to. It challenges you. It exposes you. It forces you to deal with parts of yourself you've been ignoring. And that's why it's valuable. Because anything that forces you to grow will never feel comfortable. Most people choose comfort. They choose distraction. They choose to stay surrounded, even if it means staying average. You don't get that luxury if you want to reach a higher level. You have to be willing to stand alone, think alone, work alone, and improve alone, because at the highest level, that's exactly where you'll be. Not because people aren't around you, but because very few can operate where you operate. Very few can match your standards, your discipline, your mindset. And that separation starts long before success shows up. It starts the moment you stop fearing loneliness and start using it as a tool. Understand this clearly: patience isn't waiting. It's domination over time. And if you don't have the discipline to hold your ground while nothing is happening, you don't deserve the moment when everything does. So decide right now. Are you going to be another weak man chasing quick wins and dying forgotten? Or are you going to master time, control yourself, and become the man nobody can compete with? Choose carefully, because patience doesn't just change your results, it decides who you become.